Okay, so in the last video, I went over some quick breath work, some meditations, or just general guidelines. But to be more specific, meditation is arguably more of who you are than anything else. What I mean by this is you think more than every pattern you possess. So you think more than you blink, more than you breathe, more than your heart beats. Name a high frequency pattern. So, as this is basically your, I guess, your overtone pattern, so it is the frequency of greatest frequencies. So, as you analyze this, the idea is to perfect or refine, make better, grow, progress. However, you really want to go about this. The idea is you want to think better and then think perfectly. And then to the point where your thinking is your doing. So if you go with, again, baby steps, not trying to do the longest meditation you've ever heard of, what I'm suggesting is more so along the lines of try perfect thoughts or better thoughts. So if you're a negative thinking person, rearrange it towards thinking positive thoughts, even if you don't believe it. Belief is not necessarily the same thing as the patterns you create mentally. So belief patterns, faith patterns, that stuff goes more towards its own realm. It's not necessarily the same. So try perfect thoughts, like the idea of a mantra, something you repeat over and over and over mentally. So the idea of something like I am perfect circulation. So you repeat this over and over and over. And regardless of belief, you will start to change your body's molecular rotations. So you'll get all of your liquids to move more, all of your gases, and then all the solids. So as you go through different ways of perfecting your self understanding, so if you grow and you continually progress, I am, and then whatever you decide to be is what you become. You are more what you create than anything else. You are more what you think than most, basically everything else. Then it comes to breath work. Breath work is where we'll go today. We'll go towards what's called Uddiyana Bandha. And this is where breathing and postures start to merge. So you start to have these odd in-betweens where the breath work requires the pose requires the breath work, and then since the respiration areas in the body are so large, poses greatly affect breathing or non-breathing greatly affects the poses. So everything from strength, agility, flexibility, endurance, etc., etc. So I'm going to show you Uddiyana Bandha right now. Now, it's extremely difficult to talk while doing this pose because of the amount of respiratory pressure you're doing internally. Like you're basically closing your esophagus through internal pressure. I'm going to turn sideways to do this, and then I'm going to pull all my organs from the lower portions of the torso to the higher portions of the torso using inner manipulation. So you're just taking your muscles and you're sucking everything up through the diaphragm, so to speak. So you're taking everything up towards the higher portions, all right? So you're going to exhale fully, then you're going to hold the breath and suck everything up. So you're going to exhale as deeply as you possibly can. If you're uncomfortable exhaling, again, this is stuff that as soon as you start practicing, it's going to create discomfort if you're not used to it, if it's too extreme for you. But again, baby steps, piecemeal, piece by piece by piece. One grain of sand doesn't create a beach. So many, 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 many many attempts later, then it's easy. So exhale, hold the breath, pull everything up. Exhale. Then you inhale, relax the muscles. Any type of breathing before and after is also going to, shall we say, lubricate the process. It's going to make everything have less friction internally. So it's going to be easier to move your insides and feel less. Having said that, please don't just jump into that if you're not familiar or don't feel comfortable with it. Like if you're from a past or your life has had a lot of history of self-manipulation, a lot of motion, stuff like that, by all means. If you eat a lot and your metabolic rates and processes are in operation continually, you're going to squeeze food while in the organ. So it's best to be fasting while doing this. I know this is difficult to ask of people, but if you fast, or if you do this in the morning after sleeping, or if you do this after sleeping in general, whether you sleep at night or not. So if you do this when you're basically pulling the body out of, a fasting time, so sleep for most people. Me, I don't eat much, so I can do this. I do this a lot. But if you do this properly, it's like every other type of circulation. Imagine owning a toilet and never flushing it. Like, why have plumbing? Why have circulation if you do not create perfect circulation? Why have plumbing and then just let it, shall we say, deteriorate? So, on the premise of what we were doing with the last video, we're going to go over more foundational poses. We're going to go over one of the inversions that's like the easiest, shall we say, for Westerners to get into. So doing a seated forward fold inverted. Then we'll go towards other things like more intense forward folds than we did in the last one, more intense back bends than we did in the last one, both from a standing pose. Then we're going to go towards splits, or the general theorem of splits. You don't have to do a full split every time you do a split. And the idea of partial splits, opposite splits, there's a lot that goes into splits. We could be talking for a very long time at length to describe all of this. But for right now, I'm going to show you the plow. So we're going to open up the shoulders and the neck and the rear portions so that everything on the back of the torso gets a stretch and an elongation, and everything on the front gets a contraction and a squeeze. So you squeeze everything empty on the front, you enlarge everything and fill it on the back of you. So please try to breathe and try to keep your meditation. I'll remind you incessantly, because I know while you're focusing on these weird poses, if you haven't done them before, keeping thoughts that you haven't had or thought before is also difficult. Keeping a breath pattern if you haven't done breath work before, not like runners, swimmers, especially long distance ones, you're not going to have any problems with this. Singers, stuff like that. People who have diaphragmatic work or experience are going to be, shall we say, more inclined towards this. But it doesn't matter. You can build whatever you're trying to build. You can increase or get better at whatever you're trying to progress at. So we're going to go upside down so that all of your liquid rotates. You're going to take all the liquid from the bottom portions of the body and take it into the top, let the heart clean it. You're going to take everything from the top and allow it to rotate through the bottom, allowing everything once again to go through the more pressurized systems in the legs, being the densest of muscles. So, in this pose, try to breathe as deeply as you can. I can't talk that loud in this pose because of how it squeezes the microphone on the neck, right? So, I gotta turn this thing sideways. So this is a general plow, all right? You're talking about a type of plow, but this is more of a happy baby going towards a plow. The second you raise the hips, you're talking about creating a plow type posture. What I would aim to instill in everyone is getting as far as you possibly can in the plow. So bringing the hips towards the head. Please, if you feel comfortable, allow the knees to go to the side of the head. Allow the arms to go in whatever direction you feel comfortable with. The point is to breathe and get better. If this is all easy for you, the next pose is a more intense forward fold. Please, any sideways motions are going to make it easier to deal with the stretch of the main muscle groups. So while you feel the pressure of the main groups moving in the pose, you allow it to change pressures by going sideways. Now, if it's a sideways pose, you change pressures by going a direction other than sideways. So, as you take your time transitioning from pose to pose, please breathe and circulate your oxygen. It's really just a matter of regeneration with the body. So you're either circulating lactic acid towards you blink, and every time you blink, you tear the muscles in your eyelids alone. Every time your heart beats, you tear your internal pieces just from moving and then having to regenerate. So being in such a state of constant regeneration, in such a frequency of it, you are more your rate of healing than you are your current today or now, however you want to consider that. So please breathe and keep in mind that you are more your oxygen than pretty much everything other than hydrogen or electricity or void. So I'm just giving a slight amount of time if you're following with this and doing yoga with me. If this is too slow, feel free, I'm going to give it another couple seconds just so everyone breathes and no one tears anything. Please go as slow as you possibly can, even if you're used to this. Changing the breath work on a pose changes all of the internal, shall we say, pressures, trajectories, the list goes on. Even if you're changing how you think in a balancing pose, becomes some of the most dangerous of exercises. So please, breathe, take your time, don't go too fast. Baby steps, like how a toddler learns how to walk on legs that are barely even developed to walk. Same exact principles. So please, again, do not move as fast as me if you're not comfortable with it. Now, this being such another type of forward fold, it's difficult on this little neck piece I have. So, as you breathe, this is the type of forward fold I was showing in the last video. But if you're comfy in that pose, allowing the toes to rotate wide, as you can see I'm doing with my toes, allowing the knees to rotate wide and outwards, taking the hands and going backwards. Please, again, if this is too easy, go further. Allow yourself to walk the shoulders down and behind the knees and rotate the arms up and behind you. Now, let any of this go and let those muscles relax. Do the opposite pose, which is a back bend. So you take yourself standing legs together, allow the toes to rotate to the outside, the knees to bend slightly, taking the hands and tracing them down to the inside of the legs, and then straightening, pulling with the arms. So straightening the legs and pulling with the arms. Please just take your time and allow yourself to breathe. This is all very extreme on the neurals and the organs. Any type of pose going the opposite way is going to create almost the opposite sensation in the body. So allowing one part to relax, one part to work. This part that was working now relaxes. This part that was relaxing now works. So I'm taking this type of side split because we're going to go over the general idea or theorem or what it takes mathematically, geometrically to create a split. So anytime you take the femurs outside of a parallel arrangement, you're entering a split or at least a partial split. So something like this, more of like a hero pose, more of like a frog pose. What it looks like from the side looks like so. So you've got the feet to the outside of the hips, right? That naturally is going to start to bring the knees wide and then towards the split. Having said all this, one of the best ways to go directly towards the center portions of the torso is through a full side split. So starting in a standing pose and lowering the legs. And then where you're comfortable is where you should be. So as you take your time going towards a forward fold, a backward fold, even just rotating the toes towards you, away from you, towards the front of you, towards the back of the body, please, even just spinal twists. And everyone's split's going to look different. Even if your split is to this angle, baby steps. Eventually, then you get to the point and you're in a split. So that's a nice little video for everybody. I hope people find this constructive. Again, if you do just these generalized poses, the one for the shoulders, front and back of the spine, the center areas, and then like a basic side split, at least some type or degree of side split, taking the femurs to the side of the body, working like the obliques, the intercostals, the muscles going on the side of the rib cage, the side of the hips. You will create a body that has much better circulation. Like focusing on the limbs, focusing on the torso and the head. I mean, most people die from heart-related issues. So those forward, backward folds, and then the shoulder and hip cleanses are going to create much better circulation so you don't have issues in the heart, central tendon, diaphragm areas. It also cleans the liver greatly. So, again, I hope you enjoyed this. I'll leave tags and stuff at the bottom for anyone to find more yoga on Instagram if you'd like.